the Jordan River, a 200-mile ribbon of water that still forms a living border between the modern Kingdom of Jordan and the lands of Israel and the West Bank. In 1400 BC, this same waterway stood as one of the final, seemingly impossible obstacles between the wandering Israelites and the long-promised land they had journeyed toward for 40 years. It is here that the Ark of the Covenant steps fully into history. Joshua has been given the command to lead an entire nation across the river. According to the ancient account, the golden chest containing the tablets of the law is carried first into the rushing current. Witnesses later claimed that a mysterious energy surged from the ark itself. The waters of the Jordan rose up on either side, standing like solid walls, and a dry pathway opened so that every man, woman, and child could cross into the Holy Land on solid ground. If the story is true, even partially true, what kind of power could the ark have possessed that was capable of stopping a living river in its tracks? What if the people who recorded these events were not inventing legends, but simply describing what their eyes had actually seen? If that is the case, then the Ark of the Covenant was not merely a sacred object, it was a piece of technology more advanced than anything we possess today. Some researchers suggest that high-velocity winds or focused pressure fields could part water and hold it in vertical walls, blow hard enough, long enough, and the river itself can be pushed aside. Others go further. They argue that the Israelites were using technology that did not originate on this planetan extraterrestrial, the device that allowed them to continue their journey and achieve the impossible. The same ark appears again, only a short time later. According to the book of Joshua, the Israelites reached the western bank of the Jordan and set their sights on the fortress city of Jericho, a city whose walls were considered unbreakable. Word of the ark's power had already spread. The people inside the city were terrified. They had heard the rumors of a great and terrible chest that could stop rivers and crush armies. God's command is precise. March around the walls once each day for 6 days. On the 7th day they are to circle the city 7 times. Then sound the trumpets and raise a great shout. Between the rhythmic pounding of thousands of feet, the blasts of the ram's horns, the shofar, and some unexplained power radiating from the ark, the massive stone walls of Jericho begin to vibrate with an earthquake-like force and finally collapse. When we hear that the Israelites walked around Jericho for 7 days and that the trumpets brought the walls down, the question becomes unavoidable: was something else at work? Destroying a wall with focused pressure is not impossible. We know what a sonic boom from a landing space shuttle can do. Even at a distance it rattles windows and shakes walls. Imagine that same force delivered at close range, amplified and directed. The damage could be catastrophic. The same mystery of lost technology surrounds the greatest stone structures on Earth. How were the megalithic temples of Puma, Punku, and the pyramids of Egypt built? The methods remain unexplained. Even more puzzling is the complete absence of the tools that should have been required. Much of this work was accomplished in an age without steel. The copper tools the Egyptians possessed could be hardened by cold hammering, yet they still could not cut rocks as hard as basalt and granite. Either the ancient builders used techniques so laborious they defy belief, or they possessed advanced technology that has completely escaped us. After 40 years of studying these questions, the conclusion becomes harder and harder to avoid. The tools and machines that raised the pyramids, that shaped statues to a level of precision we still measure in modern inspection laboratories, and that created stone boxes with tolerances that match today's manufacturing standards, where are they? In the late 19th century, British archaeologist Sir Flinders Petrie searched Egypt not for the largest monuments, but for the smallest clues. He was obsessed with the technical achievements of the early Egyptians. He wanted to know how they made things, how they refined their methods, how they perfected their tools. We are taught that the ancient Egyptians worked with only the simplest implements. What Petrie uncovered argues strongly against that idea. He found drill holes with incredibly fine regular lines. He found a perfect cylindrical hole that tapered at one end. He found a fragment of a diorite bowl, one of the hardest stones on Earth, bearing clear lathe marks. Somehow, the ancient craftsman had managed to turn and finish a material that should have destroyed ordinary tools. Among all of Petrie's discoveries, one object stood out. Deep inside the Great Pyramid, he found a tubular granite drill core. Tubular drills were not unknown in ancient Egypt. Petrie recovered several, but the specimen from Giza is different. It is carved from extremely hard stone and marked with precise, evenly spaced grooves only a couple of millimeters apart that run cleanly around the entire circumference with almost no deviation. Petrie was astonished. He returned to this single artifact again and again throughout his life. His conclusion was that the Egyptians must have used diamonds or some other ultra-hard jewel to cut the stone. Yet no diamonds have ever been found in the archaeological record of ancient Egypt. If the Egyptians did not have diamonds, how were those perfectly spaced grooves cut into granite? Did Petrie accidentally discover a tool that was never made by human hands? Modern machinist Chris Dunn decided to test the conventional explanation, using only a copper tube sand and silicon carbide, the materials Egyptologists claim were available. He spent many hours cranking a handmade drill into a block of granite. Eventually, he produced a core. Under a high-powered industrial microscope, the difference was undeniable. The core drilled with copper and sand shows faint, irregular striations. There is nothing distinctive about the tool marks. The latex impression taken from the original core in the Petrie Museum is entirely different. The striations are deep, clear, and regular. The devil is in the details, and these details are a smoking gun. They force us to reconsider the level of technology we are willing to credit to the ancient Egyptians. Did visitors from another world inspire our ancestors to raise temples and pyramids? And if they came, did they leave behind knowledge of physics, astronomy, and mathematics that still survives in the objects they touched? One remarkable candidate is the Antikythera mechanism, often called the world's first mechanical computer. It is more than 2,000 years old. In 1900, sponge divers working near the small Aegean island of Antikythera discovered a shipwreck. Among the debris was a coral-encrusted metal box. It was taken to the Athens Museum. 50 years later, X-rays revealed an intricate system of interlocking geared wheels. It is a computer, an astonishingly sophisticated machine. It served two purposes. As an astronomical device, it allowed a user to chart the positions of the stars and navigate the open sea. As an astrological instrument, it could calculate the influence of planetary alignments on a person's life. Its gearing is more complex than that of a modern Swiss watch. Yet, it dates to approximately 200 BC, when archaeologists first examined it. In the 1950s, they declared they could not imagine the ancient Greeks possessing such machinery. Finding it, they said, was like discovering a jet airplane. In the tomb of King Tut, even older are the strange carvings on the walls of an underground crypt at the Dendera temple, complex in Egypt. Only high priests were ever allowed into this narrow, sweltering chamber. On the walls are reliefs that look uncannily like modern light bulbs. How did the ancient Egyptians illuminate the pitch-black interiors of their tombs and temples? Mainstream archaeology insists they used torches. Yet the ceilings show no soot, no smoke residue of any kind. There is not enough oxygen in many of these sealed spaces to sustain an open flame for long. The only remaining possibility is an artificial light source, something very much like a light bulb. But how could the Egyptians have possessed anything resembling electric lighting thousands of years before? electricity was officially discovered? The answer may lie in the objects known as the Baghdad batteries, discovered in ancient Iraq. Roughly a dozen of these clay jars contain a copper cylinder and an iron rod sealed with asphalt. Scholars long insisted that ancient people could not have understood electricity. The conventional explanation is that the jars were used only for electroplating jewelry. Yet, when researchers reconstructed the device and filled it with a weak acid grape juice, orange juice, or when the combination of copper, iron, and electrolyte produces a measurable electric current, it is a battery. Everyone agrees on that fact. What no one can explain is why someone more than 2,000 years ago would design such a device, or what mind first conceived of electrical currents so long ago. The idea that ancient civilizations experimented with electricity is no longer fringe. Just as Benjamin Franklin and his contemporaries began exploring simple electrical phenomena 2 centuries ago, evidence now shows that people more than 3,000 years earlier were doing the same. Today, on the largest construction sites and in the deepest quarries, colossal machines dig, cut, and lift stone. These hydraulic giants perform the labor of thousands of men. Without them, modern skyscrapers could never rise. Yet thousands of years ago, ancient builders were moving stones that would challenge even today's engineers' blocks weighing more than 100 tons. They cut them from solid bedrock, transported them across miles of rough terrain, and set them into place with astonishing precision. How? Did they rely solely on hammers, chisels, and copper wire, as mainstream archaeology claims? Could they have lifted and moved these monsters without pulleys or even the wheel? Or did they possess advanced technologies that have been lost to us? At Giza, the pyramids themselves are built of blocks weighing 2 or 3 tons, but the nearby valley temple's structures far smaller than the pyramid, constructed of blocks weighing 100 and even 200 tons. A single 100 block is the equivalent of 100 family cars crushed into one mass. Why would anyone choose to build with stones the size of semi-trucks when smaller blocks would have been far easier to handle? The decision makes no practical sense unless the builders possessed technology that rendered the size almost irrelevant. Anyone who visits a modern stone quarry and sees the enormous machinery required to cut and move comparable blocks quickly understands the scale of the problem. Those machines are massive. The ancient builders somehow achieved the same results without any of them. Supporters of the ancient astronaut theory do not claim that extraterrestrials personally stacked every stone. They suggest something more subtle, that advanced knowledge or advanced tools were given to our ancestors. Engineering researcher Chris Dunn has spent decades examining the tool marks left on Egyptian stone. Egyptologists tell us the workers used only stone balls, copper chisels, copper tubes, and sand to grind holes into diorite and granite, some of the hardest rocks on Earth. Everything Dunn has observed argues against that limited toolkit. Standing on the Giza Plateau, looking at the 2.5 million blocks that form the Great Pyramid alone, one realization becomes inescapable. The builders needed an efficient, rapid system for cutting stone to exact sizes and delivering those stones on demand. Miles north of Giza, at Abu Rawash, Dunn found a granite block with a deep, clean cut. For days he turned the problem over in his mind, waking at 3 in the morning, asking the same question: how was this cut made? The only tool that could produce such a cut is a circular saw approximately 35 feet in diameter. Mainstream archaeologists rejected the idea of giant saws. Dunn, a former machinist, continued looking. He searches for tool marks everywhere he goes. He acknowledges that someone looking for machine marks is more likely to find them, but the marks are real. They appear on statues in the Luxor Museum and undercut beside the figure of Amun, where a tool clearly slipped. The efficiency of that tool is obvious. In the early hours of November 5, 2005, The luxury cruise ship Seabourn Spirit came under attack by pirates off the coast of Somalia. The attackers were driven off by a relatively new weapon, a long-range acoustic device, or LRAD. Focused sound exceeding 150 decibels can cause temporary blindness, nausea, and permanent hearing damage. The U.S. military has used similar sonic weapons for crowd control in Iraq. Low-frequency rumbles can make a person physically ill. The LRAD is considered cutting-edge 21st century technology. But is it truly new? 17 miles northeast of Jerusalem stand the ruins of Jericho, a city with evidence of continuous settlement reaching back to 9000 BC, according to the Hebrew Bible. This is where God instructed Joshua to march around the walls once a day for 6 days, accompanied by 7 priests carrying ram's horns and the Ark of the Covenant. On the 7th day they circled the city 7 times, blew the horns, and the walls fell. Religious tradition calls the event a miracle. Most modern scientists and historians prefer an earthquake. Yet another possibility remains: that the Israelites possessed advanced sound wave technology. The Ark of the Covenant was present throughout the siege. Many researchers now argue that the chest itself was a weapon or at least a power source capable of amplifying the sound of the shofars into a destructive force. The association between the Ark and the collapse of the walls is explicit in the text. Some ancient astronaut theorists believe Moses received a supernatural energy source at Mount Sinai and later sealed it inside the Ark. That energy could have transformed ordinary ram's horns into a directed sonic weapon. The parallel with modern particle beam death ray and directed energy research is difficult to ignore. Once again, the ancient record appears to describe technology that was ready for use whenever military necessity demanded it. High in the Andes of Peru, 12 miles north of Pumapunku lies Lake Titicaca, largest lake in South America. Local legend says the creator god Viracocha rose from its dark waters, fashioned the sun, the stars, and the first human beings, then traveled to Tiwanaku and Pumapunku. There he shaped men and women from stone and sent them to the 4 corners of the earth. When Spanish conquerors asked the Inca king and his people who had built Pumapunku, the answer was unanimous: it was not us. It was not our fathers. The gods made it in a single night. Kings are usually eager to claim the achievements of their ancestors. Here they refused. One tradition states that the giant platforms of Pumapunku were moved through the air by the sound of a trumpet and floated into place. The suggestion of acoustic levitation technology is impossible to dismiss entirely. Were these legends inspired by real events in the distant past? Or do they preserve the memory of visitors from another world? One speculative reconstruction imagines an extraterrestrial craft in orbit. A smaller landing vehicle descends. To protect sensitive instruments, the visitors quickly construct a base camp using local stone, granite, and diorite they would never bother to transport across interstellar distances. Then they leave. Centuries later, the native people discover the ruins. They run their hands over the impossibly smooth, razor-sharp surfaces and declare that the gods built this place. The site becomes sacred. Temples and altars rise around the original walls. 2 technologies now stand side by side: the advanced work of the visitors and the later, more modest constructions of human hands. Along the east bank of the Nile at Luxor stretch the vast remains of the Karnak temple complex, begun in the 32nd century BC. Halls, obelisks, and an avenue of sphinxes grew across the reigns of more than 30. For centuries, scholars have regarded Karnak as proof of the extraordinary skill of early human builders, yet the construction techniques themselves raise deeper questions. The hieroglyphs are carved with breathtaking beauty and precision. On the great obelisks, the same inscriptions appear on all 4 faces, identical in every detail, cut deep into red granite. Looking at them today, the eye insists that only a machine could have produced such uniformity. Narrow slots only 0.14 inches wide and half an inch deep. Show clear rotating tool marks at the bottom. Evidence of a tool that punched in, withdrew, stepped down, and punched again. No human hand, however skilled, can replicate that motion with such consistency. The accepted Egyptian toolkit copper, chisels, stone hammers, wooden mallets cannot produce these results. The precision visible at Karnak matches the tolerances of modern manufacturing to 10,000ths of an inch, 1,000th of an inch. Our entire technological civilization depends on such accuracy. How do we explain its presence in the ancient world? The colossal statue of Ramses displays near-perfect bilateral symmetry. When photographs of the left and right sides are overlaid as transparencies, they match almost exactly. Today, we achieve that level of perfection only with machines. Compare the tool marks on the ancient statue with those left by modern machining equipment. The striations, the geometry, the precision, and the characteristic digging above the eyebrow are identical. All three signatures of machine work symmetry, geometry, and tool marks appear on both the modern aluminum model and the ancient granite face, performing such work entirely by hand. Without mechanical assistance, borders on the impossible. If the tool marks are the same, the conclusion follows. The ancient builders had access to machines, and quite possibly to electricity. Official history insists they possessed neither power tools nor diamond saws. Yet the results they achieved demand precisely those technologies. Where did the tools come from? One answer continues to surface. They received them from ancient visitors. In the heart of Tiwanaku stands the Gateway of the Sun, carved from a single 10-ton block of andesite, 10 feet tall and 13 feet wide. It once formed an entrance to the sacred precincts of Puma Punku through a series of ever smaller gateways and stairways. Pilgrims were led toward the most holy spaces. Across the upper face of the arch, nearly 50 winged figures flank the central image of the creator god Vir. Some researchers interpret the carvings as a calendar. Reaching back as far as 27,000 BC, Viracocha holds two scepters and is surrounded by birdmen beings capable of flight in culture after culture. The image of a man who flies is the way ordinary people described someone who arrived from the sky. One theory proposes that a massive airborne factory, equipped with power tools, saws, rooters, and drills, once hovered above the plateau, cutting and shaping the enormous stone blocks that still litter the site. The entire complex begins to look less like a temple, and more like a technological installation, possibly even a facility designed to generate energy. The suggestion that electricity and powered machinery were in use thousands of years ago sounds extraordinary. Yet when the quality and complexity of the stonework at Puma Punku are examined without preconception, the evidence becomes difficult to ignore. The huge platforms, the interlocking blocks, the walls that the builders believed would last forever, all of it. It resembles the kind of perfectly engineered granite structure that advanced visitors might construct as a landing site or operational base. The stones remain, the tool marks remain. The stories remain. What is still missing is an explanation that accounts for all of it. If you want part 2 of this video, please like, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss it.